Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. I didn't even hear him come in. The bathroom door was cracked open, steam drifting through the warm air as I stood in front of the mirror, skin still damp from the shower. My back was arched slightly as I reached for the towel behind me, eyes closed for a moment as I let the heat settle into my muscles. It was supposed to be a quiet morning, no interruptions, no eyes on me. But then I felt it. A shift in the air. A presence. And before I could turn around, a voice, low, warm, too close, whispered behind me. "I didn't mean to interrupt, but you dropped this." It was Evan, the new house guest renting the spare room. Older than most, confident in a calm, disarming way. The kind of man whose footsteps you never hear but whose presence you always feel. My heartbeat stuttered. Not from fear, but from the sudden closeness of him. I opened my eyes slowly, breath catching when I saw his reflection behind mine, just a few steps back, holding the towel I'd been reaching for. His gaze wasn't lingering anywhere inappropriate, yet the intensity of it made my pulse race. There was something unspoken there, something neither of us had acknowledged until now. For a moment, neither of us said a word. Only the soft hum of the bathroom fan. Only the tension stretching thin between us. Only the feeling that he had stepped just a little too close, and I hadn't stepped away. His fingers brushed mine as he handed me the towel, a small, accidental touch that sent a warm jolt straight through me. I swallowed hard, turning slightly, just enough to face him, just enough to feel the heat radiating between us. His eyes held mine. Steady. Curious. Almost like he was waiting for me to make the next move. I tightened my grip on the towel, unsure if I should cover myself, step back, or stay right where I was. Then he whispered again, softer this time, even closer, "If you want. I can wait outside. Unless you don't want me to." My breath hitched, and everything inside me froze. Because I wasn't sure what my answer was. For the rest of the morning, I couldn't shake the feeling of his voice behind me, the warmth of it, the quiet restraint in the way he handed me the towel. Evan had only been living in the spare room for a month, but somehow he had already slipped into the quiet corners of my routine, into the places I didn't expect another person to fit. I stepped into the kitchen later, hair still damp, pretending my heartbeat wasn't picking up just at the thought of him being nearby. But there he was leaning against the counter, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee like he'd always belonged there. "Morning," he said without looking at me yet, but the sound of his voice alone made my stomach tighten. He finally lifted his eyes, and there it was again. That unspoken something. I tried to play it cool. "Sorry about earlier," I muttered, reaching for a mug. "Didn't hear you come in." His lips curved into a faint smile. I noticed. A pause. "And you don't need to apologize." There was a gentleness to his tone, but underneath it, a tension neither of us dared to name. Before he moved in, the house had been too quiet. Too predictable. For months, maybe years, I'd been living on autopilot, fulfilling responsibilities, following routines, pretending the emptiness didn't echo in the hallways. After my last relationship fell apart, I told myself I was fine alone. That I didn't need anyone. That solitude was safer. But solitude had a price. Sometimes it felt like the silence pressed on my skin. Then Evan arrived, polite, reserved, carrying a quiet heaviness he never spoke about. He was rebuilding his life after a difficult breakup of his own. He didn't go into detail, but the way he sometimes stared into his coffee, lost in thought, told me enough. There was pain he wasn't ready to unpack. Maybe that's why we understood each other. Two people quietly carrying what they didn't say. As I reached over him to grab the sugar, my hand brushed his forearm, a soft, warm contact that wasn't meant to happen, but neither of us moved away. For a second too long, we stayed like that, close enough to feel each other breathe. I pulled my hand back, heart flickering in my chest. "Sorry," I whispered. "It's okay," he murmured, voice low, steady. Almost inviting. Evan looked at me like he was searching for something, a hint, a signal, an answer I wasn't sure I was ready to give. But I felt the question in the air between us, thick and electric. He took a slow breath, as if about to say something deeper, maybe something that would change the quiet balance we'd been holding on to. But instead, he simply handed me my mug, fingers brushing mine just long enough to make the moment impossible to ignore. Neither of us mentioned what happened earlier. Neither of us had to. Some truths speak louder in silence. And this silence was starting to feel dangerous. The tension between us didn't fade over the next few days, it sharpened. Every shared glance lingered a second too long. Every accidental touch felt intentional. Every conversation had a quiet, dangerous warmth underneath it. But it wasn't until he wasn't looking at me that the real conflict started. It happened late in the afternoon when a friend of mine, Mira, dropped by unannounced. She was lively, flirtatious by nature, and never hesitated to charm anyone in the room, including Evan. I watched from the kitchen doorway as Mira leaned forward, laughing at something he said, touching his arm casually. Evan didn't flirt back exactly, but he didn't pull away either. He just offered that small, reserved smile he'd never shown anyone else since he moved in. A strange heat tightened in my chest, unfamiliar and unwelcome. Jealousy. Not loud. Not obvious. Just a quiet ache that made me look away before either of them noticed. But he noticed. His eyes flicked toward me for half a second, sharp, searching, like he could feel the shift in me even across the room. Mira kept talking, oblivious, but Evan's attention was no longer fully on her. It was on me. Later, after she left, the house felt different. Too still. Too full of everything unspoken. I was wiping down the counter when he walked in. He didn't say a word at first. He just leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes locked onto me with a quiet intensity that made my breath hitch. "You were quiet earlier," he said finally. "I was fine," I replied, keeping my voice steadier than I felt. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, his expression unreadable but charged with something that made my pulse thrum. "Mira, she likes talking," he said carefully. But I wasn't really interested in her. I swallowed. "You don't owe me an explanation." "Maybe not," he murmured, "but I didn't like how you looked away." The air tightened. His voice dropped lower, softer, almost exposing something he'd been trying to hold back. "I don't want you thinking anyone else here has my attention." My heart stumbled. Because that sounded dangerously close to something we had both been avoiding. He took one more step toward me, close enough that the space between us felt alive, charged, unsteady. But he didn't touch me. He just whispered, "You felt it too, didn't you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Silence confessed everything. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm you could sense but not see. Every moment with Evan carried a weight, a quiet, magnetic pull neither of us dared acknowledge aloud. But avoiding it was becoming impossible. It started that night. A power outage swept through the neighborhood during a sudden rainstorm, shutting off the lights and plunging the house into darkness. I was in the living room when it happened, the sound of rain pounding against the windows making the silence even louder. "Are you okay?" Evan's voice came from the hallway, steady, but softer than usual. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "I'm fine. Just surprised." He stepped into the room, carrying a small flashlight that cast warm, shifting shadows across the walls. When he handed it to me, his fingers brushed mine, not accidental this time. Not avoidable. Let's check the breaker, he said, though his voice didn't sound like he cared much about the electricity returning. We moved through the dark hallway together, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Every step felt like the air between us was tightening, pulling, waiting for something to give. At the bottom of the stairs, the beam of the flashlight flickered, and in that moment, I stumbled slightly. Evan's hand caught my waist, firm and steady, holding me upright. The world seemed to freeze. His breath brushed my ear. My heartbeat thudded against my ribs. He didn't step back. He didn't let go. Careful, he whispered, though his voice sounded less like a warning and more like something else entirely. I turned slightly toward him. Not enough to touch, but enough that I could feel the warmth of him, the tension radiating from him, the quiet storm we were both standing in the center of. Evan, I began, unsure what I meant to say. But he gently tightened his hold on my waist, not pulling me closer, just refusing to let go. You don't have to pretend you don't feel it, he murmured, the words barely audible under the rain. Not anymore. The flashlight flickered again, plunging us into deeper shadow. All I could see were his eyes, steady, searching, full of everything we hadn't admitted. The storm outside cracked with thunder. Inside, something cracked too. We were standing one breath away from crossing a line we could never uncross. And then, a sudden knock echoed through the front door. Both of us froze. The moment shattered. And we had no idea who, or what, waited on the other side. The knock on the door came again, louder this time, cutting through the storm like a blade. Evan and I exchanged a look in the darkness. His hand slipped from my waist, but the warmth of his touch stayed like an echo on my skin. The house felt split in two, the world before that moment, and the world after. He moved ahead of me, cautious, steps firm despite the flickering light. When he opened the door, lightning illuminated the figure standing outside. Rain-soaked. Breathless. Eyes locked directly on mine. Daniel. My ex. We hadn't spoken in months. Not since the break, not since everything shattered. I thought I'd closed that chapter for good, until he showed up now, unannounced, desperate enough to stand in the storm. His voice cracked. I need to talk to you. I froze where I stood. Evan's posture shifted instantly, protective, controlled, but tense. He didn't touch me, but he didn't step aside either. What are you doing here? I asked softly. Daniel swallowed hard. His gaze flicked to Evan, then to the dim interior behind us, his jaw tightening with a hurt I didn't expect to still see. You didn't answer my messages, he said, voice trembling. And then you stopped returning calls. I thought, he exhaled shakily. I thought you were alone. His eyes landed on Evan again. A realization hit him like a punch. You're not alone. Rainwater dripped from his hair. Thunder cracked overhead. The hallway filled with a silence that felt like a confession waiting to happen. I'm here because I made mistakes, Daniel continued, voice cracking. I never told you why I left the way I did. I never told you I was scared, not of losing you, but of how much I cared. I pushed you away because I thought I'd ruin you. Evan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. Daniel stepped in closer, just enough for me to see the painful sincerity in his eyes. But when I thought of the future, you were always in it. And I can't, his voice faltered. I can't let someone else step into the place I was too afraid to hold. The storm roared. My heart pounded. I opened my mouth to speak, but Evan moved first, not aggressively, not possessively, but with a calm intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. You should know, he said quietly, that she isn't alone because someone filled a space you left behind. He turned slightly toward me, eyes meeting mine in the half-dark. She isn't alone because she chose not to be. My breath caught. The truth in his voice, the quiet claim, the raw longing neither of us had admitted, all of it hung in the air like lightning waiting to strike. Daniel's expression shifted, heartbreak, anger, realization, surrender. And in that charged moment, I felt it, this was the point of no return. Before a single word could follow, the flashlight finally died, plunging all three of us into darkness. For a few seconds, the darkness felt absolute, the kind that makes every breath louder, every heartbeat sharper. Then the emergency lights from the street flickered through the window, giving the hallway a faint silver glow. Enough to see Daniel's expression. Enough to see Evan's stance. Enough to feel the consequences pressing in around us. I stepped between them before either could speak. "Stop," I whispered. "Both of you." Daniel's voice cracked first. "I didn't come here to fight. I just needed you to hear me. To finally tell you the truth." Evan didn't respond, but something in his posture shifted, not stepping back, but stepping out of the way emotionally, giving me space to confront what I'd avoided for months. I turned toward Daniel, my chest tight. "You can't just disappear," I said softly, "and then show up expecting everything to still be yours. You left without a word. You didn't trust me enough to explain anything." Daniel ran a shaking hand through his wet hair. "I know. I was a coward. But I'm here now because losing you, losing the chance to fix things, it's been eating me alive." Behind me, I felt Evan's presence like quiet gravity, steady, grounding. But Daniel wasn't finished. "I didn't come here to claim you," he said, voice trembling. "I came to take responsibility. To tell you that I walked away not because of you, but because of me. And I thought," his voice faltered, eyes lowering. "I thought I didn't deserve you." The admission hit me harder than I expected. But pain doesn't erase the damage it caused. Before I could respond, Evan finally stepped forward, calm, controlled, but with a fire beneath the surface. "She doesn't need you to claim her or apologize to her," he said quietly. "She needs someone who actually stays." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And you think that's you?" Evan's voice didn't rise. "It didn't need to. I know what I feel. And I'm not running from it." The tension snapped between them, not violent, but raw, charged with two different kinds of love, one built from history. One built from possibility. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. "I'm not choosing between a past and a future," I said. "I'm choosing what feels right. What feels honest." Daniel's breath caught. Pain flickered through his expression, real, human, heartbreaking. But he nodded slowly, accepting what he could already see. "You've already chosen," he whispered. And maybe I had. He stepped back into the rain, voice low. "I'm sorry. For everything." Before I could answer, he turned and walked away, swallowed by the storm. The door closed softly behind him. Silence fell again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was waiting. Evan took one hesitant step toward me. No words. No pressure. Just an unspoken question in his eyes. A question I wasn't running from anymore. When the door closed and Daniel's footsteps faded into the rain, a quiet stillness filled the house, not the heavy kind that suffocates, but the kind that settles gently after a storm finally breaks. I leaned against the wall, letting the weight of the entire night wash through me. The confrontation, the confession, the choices I'd been avoiding for so long. It all lingered like the echo of thunder in the distance. Evan stayed a few steps back, watching me with that steady, thoughtful gaze of his, cautious, not wanting to overwhelm, but unable to hide the concern in his eyes. "You okay?" he asked softly. "I think so," I breathed out. "I just needed that chapter to finally close." He nodded, slow and understanding. You deserved clarity. For a moment, we stood there in the dim hallway, the faint glow from outside casting silver light on our faces. The tension that had once been sharp between us had softened into something warmer, something real. I stepped toward him. Not rushed. Not pulled. Just drawn. You stayed, I whispered, realizing the truth fully as I spoke it. Even when things got messy. Even when I was confused. I stayed because I wanted to, he said. From the moment I moved in, you became the one thing in this house that felt like home. The honesty in his voice hit me harder than any confession could. I felt warmth bloom in my chest, gentle, fragile, hopeful. I took his hand, the same hand that caught me in the dark stairwell, the same hand that lingered when he passed me the towel that morning, and held it between both of mine. He exhaled slowly, like the simple touch unraveled something tight inside him. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready for, he murmured. But I want you to know. I'm here. Not as a distraction from your past. But as someone who actually cares where your future goes. My throat tightened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a steadiness inside me instead of fear. I stepped closer, closing the last bit of distance between us. His forehead gently leaned against mine, a soft, intimate gesture that said everything without crossing any lines. Our breaths mingled, slow and quiet, the storm outside fading into a distant hum. I want a future that feels honest, I whispered. Anne. I don't want to run from what we've been feeling anymore. His fingers intertwined with mine, warm and sure. Then don't, he whispered back. In that simple moment, no grand declarations, no dramatic gestures, something shifted. Something healed. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt alive. It felt shared. Evan pulled me into a gentle embrace, his arms wrapping around me with a tenderness that made my chest tighten in the best way. I rested my head against him, feeling his heartbeat steady and warm. And for the first time since everything began, I felt safe choosing hope.